Between legend and geography lies a mystery that has puzzled historians, explorers, and map collectors for centuries, a mystery hidden within the waters of the Philippine archipelago. Imagine this: centuries ago, when European explorers first sailed across the Pacific, they drew maps filled with islands, coastlines, and territories, many of them unknown, some only heard of through stories told by sailors. And among those islands was one that stood out, boldly marked, labeled clearly for all to see: San Juan. For generations, this island appeared in official maps of the Philippines. Explorers mentioned it, chroniclers wrote about it. It was believed to exist, a landmass of considerable size, somewhere off the coast of Mindanao. But then, something changed. Slowly, San Juan began to disappear. Not physically, but from the records, from the charts, from every credible map that followed. By the 1700s, the once prominent island had vanished, erased from history as if it had never existed at all. No one could explain why. Did it sink beneath the sea after a great earthquake? Was it a victim of a cartographer's mistake? Or was it something more, a ghost island that never truly existed, yet found its way into the world's maps? Today, no trace of San Juan can be found on modern charts. But its name, its legend, and the question it leaves behind, how can an entire island disappear, continue to haunt historians and Filipinos alike. Our story begins during the Age of Discovery, a time when the world was still a puzzle waiting to be drawn. It was the 16th century, and European explorers were racing to chart the seas of Asia, driven by gold, glory, and the promise of lands unseen. Every voyage meant new coastlines, new islands, and sometimes, new mysteries. Among the regions that captured their imagination was the Philippine archipelago, a maze of more than 7,000 islands scattered like emeralds across the Pacific. These early mapmakers, called cartographers, often relied not on what they saw, but on what sailors claimed to have seen. Rumors became routes. Stories became coastlines. And in the midst of this uncertain geography, an unfamiliar name began to appear: San Juan. The first known mention of this mysterious island appeared on a 1537 Portolan chart by a Spanish cartographer named Gaspar Vargas. His map, hand-drawn on parchment, with ornate compass roses and curling coastlines, labeled a separate landmass simply as San Joa, the old form of San Juan, or St. John. To Vargas and those who followed, it wasn't just a minor island. It was prominent, large enough to deserve its own name, its own space, sitting off the northeastern edge of Mindanao. But the story didn't end there. Just a few decades later, in 1570, one of the most famous mapmakers of Europe, Abraham Ortelius, a Flemish cartographer often called the father of the modern atlas, published his Asiae Nova Descriptio, or New Description of Asia. And once again, there it was. The Ilhas de S. Johan, the islands of St. John, drawn confidently in the waters near Mindanao. Ortelius's maps were copied and distributed widely across Europe, spreading the belief that San Juan was not myth, but a real island of the Philippines. Over the next decades, more explorers and scholars followed suit. In 1601, Spanish historian and geographer Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas, who chronicled the early Spanish conquests in the Indies, included San Juan in his maps and writings. He too showed it as a distinct island, clearly separated from Mindanao by a stretch of open water. These were not vague sketches or accidental marks. They were deliberate, drawn by some of the most respected cartographers of their time. And so, for more than a century, San Juan lived, not in the waves, perhaps, but on parchment and belief, an island that existed in the minds of sailors, the ink of explorers, and the official maps of empire. Had once been so confidently drawn began to raise questions. Some captains claimed they could not find it. Others sailed where the map said it should be, and found only endless sea. Doubt began to creep in. Had San Juan been misplaced? Misnamed? Or had it been something else entirely, a phantom island, born of error and imagination? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: San Juan's once bright place on the map was beginning to fade. And soon, it would vanish altogether. As the map spread across Europe and Asia, the legend of San Juan grew. But what did people actually believe about this island? Early accounts, drawn from explorers, friars, and traders, suggested San Juan wasn't just a speck in the ocean. It was often portrayed as a land of considerable size, large enough to rival islands like Bohol or even Panay. Some maps drew it as a rugged, forested island, sitting just off the coast of northeastern Mindanao, close enough to be visible on a clear day, but distinct, separated by a deep, shadowed channel. To navigators, that channel was dangerous, a place where compasses spun strangely, and where storms often formed without warning. Sailors whispered that San Juan was cursed, a place the sea itself did not want discovered. No written records from the 1500s or 1600s describe a Spanish settlement there, nor any lasting expedition. But the repeated inclusion of the island on official maps tells us something important: people truly believed it was there. Mapmakers of the 16th and 17th centuries weren't careless. They copied details only when confirmed by sources they trusted: captains, merchants, priests returning from voyages. And so, if San Juan appeared again and again, it meant the rumor had weight. The island had become part of accepted geography, an undisputed truth of the time, even though few, if any, had actually set foot on it. Each map gave it slightly different shapes. Some showed a rounded island. Others drew it long and narrow, like a tear in the sea. Yet all agreed on one thing: San Juan was separate from Mindanao. It had its own boundaries, its own name, its own presence. Even Spanish chroniclers who wrote thick volumes about the Philippines, men like Antonio de Herrera and later cartographers in the 1600s, treated San Juan as real. To them, it wasn't legend or speculation. It was simply there. But as the years passed, as navigation improved and expeditions became more precise, the island that. Then came the shift, quiet at first, almost unnoticed. For more than a century, San Juan had been drawn and redrawn by mapmakers across Europe. It appeared in atlases printed in Madrid, Antwerp, and London, an accepted part of the Philippine Islands. But by the early 1700s, something strange began to happen. As the science of navigation advanced, with more accurate compasses, telescopes, and mathematical charts, explorers started to resurvey the islands. They sailed across the same waters where San Juan was supposed to be. Yet every time, they found nothing. No land on the horizon. No shoreline. No mountain peaks breaking the waves. Just endless sea. Sound Q, ocean wind rising, faint thunder crack. In 1734, a Jesuit priest and cartographer named Pedro Murillo Velarde created one of the most detailed and celebrated maps in Philippine history, Carta Hydrográfica y Coreográfica de las Islas Filipinas. His map was revolutionary, combining scientific measurement with local knowledge. It showed every major island, province, and sea route in remarkable detail. But something was missing. San Juan was gone. Not a trace. Not a label. Not even a hint of coastline. For the first time in 2 centuries, the once prominent island was erased, as if it had never existed. Sound Q, echo of ink drop, slow fade of ocean sounds. Later maps followed suit. British cartographer Herman Mall, whose maps reached scholars across Europe, omitted San Juan entirely. Spanish friars and historians like Buceta and Bravo, who catalogued Philippine provinces in the 19th century, made no mention of it. It was as though every trace of San Juan had been deliberately wiped clean from the face of geography. But no explanation was ever recorded. No mapmaker wrote a correction saying, the island was a mistake. No sailor claimed to have seen it sink beneath the waves. It simply disappeared, quietly, completely, and without warning. For historians, this disappearance raised unsettling questions. How could an island once so visible, so consistently drawn, simply vanish from the record? Was it human error? Was it deception, a mythical island copied blindly from chart to chart? Or, could something else have happened in those dark, uncharted waters off Mindanao? The maps went silent, but the mystery was only beginning to deepen.